IVM.
Imagine you're given a possibility to do anything you want, in any form, with any amount of resources, and with anyone. That kind of creative freedom sounds so liberating, isn't it? Or is it? As it turns out, boundless freedom isn't always helpful. Research shows when most people are given unlimited freedom to draw, paint, run a business, or even choose a relationship, instead of feeling liberated or abundant, they experience paralysis. Can you imagine it? Welcome to Absolutely Right, a podcast where I use the accurate tool of graphology, also known as handwriting analysis, to decode minds of some outstanding achievers and simplify their secrets and hacks for you to implement in your life. I'm your host, Aditi Surana. I'm a graphologist and a high performance coach. During this lockdown, I attended a doodling workshop with one of our podcast guests, renowned sculptor and artist Arzan Khambata. All these years, I've analyzed doodles and scribbles to understand personalities. But this was the first time I was looking at it as a form of art. In my very first class, I observed something interesting about myself. Arzan asked us to draw anything we liked in 2 minutes. Now, people like me who were doing this for the first time struggled with that activity as we didn't know where to begin. We looked at so many references in our minds, but we couldn't come up with much in that time. Then after some time, he came back on the Zoom call and gave us new instructions to begin, and then the class went on. But I stayed with that experience. I wondered why I couldn't think of much when I had total freedom to choose anything I wanted. Have you ever seen yourself coming up with some innovative, efficient, even path-breaking ideas at the 11th hour? On a regular basis, I spend 6 days pondering about a topic, making my notes, but I do not get to writing my Friday episode until I reach Wednesday night or Thursday morning. In all honesty, I have tried writing drafts on Mondays or even before that, but they are never as satisfactory as they turn out on a Thursday. Sorry, Sumit, Tejas, Shravan, Rishi, our brilliant recording team members. In today's short Friday episode, let's talk about why constraints are not always roadblocks. How do I use constraints of a blank paper to actually understand personality? And 4 ways to deal with constraints and solve problems. If you're new here, let me fill you in. Absolutely Right Friday episodes are designed to create an actionable change. With every episode, we create a worksheet, or as we call it, Friday Fun Sheet, for you to commit to growth and take actions. This is a PDF document that you can download from my website, aditisurana.com/podcast. Obstacles boost brain power. Constraints are essential. You actually need them to get good at creating something remarkable. You need the limitations to inspire better thinking. I found this concept, think inside the box, in artist Phil Hansen's TED Talk, Embrace the Shake. While studying at an art school, he developed a nerve damage and couldn't draw a straight line. He was depressed. He was disappointed in himself because he really, really wanted to pursue his career. At some point, after having tried everything possible, he decided to embrace this limitation, which led to some phenomenal path breaking work and international recognition. When I analyze handwritings, I ask people to write a paragraph about anything that comes to their mind on a blank, unruled sheet of paper. Most people struggle with this small task for 2 reasons. One, that they're writing after ages, as handwriting has gone out of fashion, and other, that an unruled paper is so uncomfortable to write on, especially if you're not used to it. Now, these are deliberately designed constraints for your mind to actually express itself. Though the task looks simple, it is filled with numerous hidden constraints, as the blank paper is boundless. At the same time, you have to negotiate with many possibilities to write on that paper. Graphologically speaking, your mind considers a blank page like a day. Each one of us approaches our 24 hours differently. When you move from left to right, it shows how focused you are on your task. Are you determined? Do you waste time? Do you start and lose interest halfway? Or you actually need someone to push you through? All these choices are expressed because you have the constraint of a blank paper, the unruled paper. Sometimes your handwriting goes up, sometimes it goes down, sometimes it goes all over the place. And that becomes the way to understand what is happening inside your mind. Let me explain this concept further in next week's new segment, Graphology Tool of the Week. Another example of constraint. A very dear friend of mine, David D'Souza, is a very talented anti-fashion photographer, as he calls himself, and also a teacher. In one of our endless conversations over coffee, he told me, Aditi, I always give myself a budget when I do my art. It could be any amount. Sometimes it is as low as 500 rupees. As I cannot spend more than the budget I have decided for myself, I really have to think hard. This constraint has some this constraint has surprised me every now and then. I landed up creating outfits for my models out of plastic bags, fish nets, using even hangers and used materials. One time I also used actual fish to model her with. In my personal creative projects, I rarely go overboard. And it is not about the money, but actually challenging myself. That thought is so powerful. I must say, the ability to deliberately challenge oneself is one of the very few common things that I have found in my personal research with high performers. Life in general is full of constraints. If you do not challenge yourself to think of a solution, keeping all the limitations in mind, then you'll find yourself giving up almost every now and then. All your desires, all your dreams become unreachable. If need is the mother of invention, then constraint is the mother of innovation. And by that, I do not mean some revolutionary ideas. I actually mean simple, everyday constraint that you can embrace. And the very moment you decide to do so, it will change the narrative of your life. Let me present 4 ways in which we can deal with constraint and actually think inside the box to solve our problems. Point number 1, embrace limitations instead of questioning it. Google's vice president of search products and user experience, Marisa Mayer, believes that a certain amount of constraint, whether in file size, pixels, or speed, fosters a lot of innovation. People tend to think of unimaginable ways to solve the same problem. Coming back to the TED speaker I was referring to, Phil Hansen, he says limitations may be the most unlikely places to harness creativity, but perhaps one of the best ways to get ourselves out of a rut, rethink categories, and even challenge accepted norms. And instead of telling each other to seize the day, maybe it's time we remind ourselves every day to seize the limitation. I wonder, what will change for you if you seize your limitations? Point number 2, be willing to roll with the punches. Yes, there will be punches when it comes to any form of problem solving. If you resist or even fear the punches, then sorry, but you cannot think of solving the problem because your mind will be busy thinking about 1500 ways to escape the problem. Being willing is the operative word here. Willing to fall, fail, get hurt, be embarrassed, even break down if required. If you do that, it helps you accept the worst case scenario and move forward. When I catch myself resisting the punches, I ask this question: what am I unwilling to do here? Point number 3, step out of your shoes. So many times we feel constrained in our own heads. We keep living through the lens of our own conclusions, references, even past experiences. It just magnifies the actual problem. Not because the problem is really tough, but mainly because we are stuck in our own preferences. Step out of it and think of the situation objectively. For a change, ask yourself, what do I require to do here? Not what I desire, prefer, love to, but what do I require to do here? Point number 4, what will you do next time? My art director father was a master at thinking on his feet. He managed to challenge himself and by default all of us every now and then. He created many puzzles for us to solve by merely changing or altering one of the things in the house. How will you paint without a brush? Then we use our hands and fingers and feet at times. If you do not use the ladder, how will you keep the books on the loft? So many things like that. Very mundane if you look at it, but challenging activities for kids. And after all of that, when we had done with the task, he asked us his favorite question: what will you do next time? I feel that one mindset of analyzing the situation after the problem was solved and thinking of alternate options actually trained me to choose an untraveled path of graphology. I feel that one mindset of analyzing your own actions and thinking of multiple possibilities actually trained me to choose an untraveled path of graphology as a career and enjoy my entrepreneurial journey. Every time I broke something, didn't choose to win a battle, I looked at it as an experience and thought, what will I do next time? Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Absolutely Right. Do you think you work better with constraints or without them? Do share your thoughts and questions with me on my Instagram handle at Aditi Surana. If you like this podcast, then don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on IVM Network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Let's connect on Wednesday. Till then, happy writing.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So it's been a great week on the network, as it almost always is. Let me give you a couple of highlights that you should definitely check out. Chiki Sarkar was on This Round's on Me with Gauri Devi Dayal. Great conversation. I think you will really enjoy that. Shlok Ramachandran of our new show, Millennial Athlete, who guested on one of our older shows, Football Shirtball. He's a big football fan in addition to being a professional athlete. So I think it's a really interesting connection. And they had a great conversation about football just generally. Nankari, our new show about Indian food, hosted by Sadaf and Archit, talk about laddus this week and basically, how awesome they are. It's Diwali week, and I think that's an apt conversation for them to have. On the Wire Talks podcast, Siddharth Bhatia has a great conversation with Dylan Mohan Gray about his work on Bad Boy Billionaire, specifically around the Vijay Mallya episode. Definitely check out the conversation if you want to know more about that. And finally, let me recommend the Edges and Sledges Cricket podcast this week. They take a look back at the IPL 2020. They go over the final, Delhi versus Mumbai, and how that played out. And they also create their dream IPL 2020 fantasy team. Do check that out. I think you'll enjoy that as well. And with that, I hope to see you again next week.
पेश खिदमत है आपकी शान में हमारे अंजुमन से. Hi, I am Sadaf.
And I'm Archit. खाने का इतिहास, economics, policy, psychology, सब है मेन्यू पे.
Only on the Nankari podcast every Wednesday, सिर्फ IVM podcast ऐप या वेबसाइट पर, या फिर जहां से भी आप अपने पॉडकास्ट सुनते हो.